Hey there, horror movie tea sippers.
The following podcast will contain spoilers for the movie we are about to review. If you have not seen the movie and do not wish to have anything ruined prematurely, then please do not continue to listen until after you have seen the movie.
And welcome to the Horror Movie Tea Podcast. Our palate cleanser that we alluded to last episode is going to be The Shining by Stanley Kubrick. But this is a movie that came out in 1980, not the Stephen King miniseries, which probably won't cover that, but who knows? Maybe sometime in the future we'll want to torture ourselves. We just wanted something nice and pleasant to watch.
Something iconic that we know and love.
Yes, so that way we can start anew with future episodes. But for tea, I am drinking the Tea Drops Rose Earl Grey. Yeah, it smells so good.
That sounds tasty.
But the reason why I was talking about the stirring noise before we started recording
It's awful.
is because the tea drops, it's just like mashed up tea leaves in like a little ball that you just put in the tea, and you have to stir it to get it to. So you do get drugs, but it also has like sugar in it too.
Huh.
So it honestly, if you haven't tried the tea drops, Jess, I think you'd like it. I kind of hate that it doesn't blend all the way through, because you do get that gritty drag at the end, which isn't the most pleasant, but I'm sure, I wonder if you just put in like a blender or one of those blending things, if that would take care of it. I don't know. But anyways.
My tea is way too hot to drink at the moment, but I have Brutality's The Shining. I had to, and I've waited so long to try this one out, guys. So this one is black tea, toasted yerba mate, cardamom, ginger, cloves, cinnamon, aniseed, natural chestnut, cinnamon, and spice flavors.
Wow. And you didn't add
spicy.
any milk to it. Is that right?
I did not. For this first go round, I wanted to try it as is, and then add things as needed.
Yeah. Well, that's... I hope you like it. I hope it lives up to our Brutality's expectations.
It smells so good, and it smells so spicy, which is just perfect for this time of year.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyways, so I will keep this brief, as many of you are probably extremely familiar with The Shining. But this father gets a job essentially being the caretaker of this huge hotel, because during the winter months the hotel has to shut down because it's pretty impossible for people to come and visit during the winter. I mean, it's not prime time for them, and so he just has to essentially give the hotel basic upkeep to make sure that's up and running and it's smooth sailing once people can come back and visit. Well, because he is locked into a hotel with his family, you could say that he gets cabin fever and gets a little bit crazy. And it very much alludes to there being supernatural influence as well. And he also has a kind of a rough history with like alcoholism. And he claims that he didn't really hurt his kid, but it alludes that there was...
He says he didn't mean to.
Yeah.
Just a momentary loss of muscle coordination, he said. But he ended up, I believe he either dislocated the kid's arm or broke his arm.
One of the two.
When pulling him up.
Yeah. But yeah, so he goes crazy and he goes on a murder axe rampage against his family. His family then...
They get away.
Yeah, they get away. And he dies cold and alone. So, not as brief as I was hoping, but this is why we shouldn't do stuff off the cuff. But anyways, so entertainment. Do you have a rating in mind?
I do. I feel like it's a solid 7 for me out of 10. I wish I could give it a little bit higher, but I feel like whenever I watch it, it's almost like it's missing a little something. And it's not, I mean, of course it's Stephen King. It's not scary. It's just weird. But it could be. That's the thing. Like with this kind of movie, it could have been scary, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it's set up to be scary for sure. I agree.
Yeah. So it just falls a little bit short, but at the same time, it's such an iconic movie, and I've watched it all throughout my childhood and growing up, and I can't even keep count of how many times I've seen this movie. So it's a little bit slow and just a bit lacking, but I do watch it regularly. So I do keep coming back to this movie.
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit higher. For me, it's more like a 7.5 because I can tell it's it's a very solid movie. There's a few things that I don't necessarily agree with their choices, but as you said, it's a very iconic film. It very much stands on its own, despite Stephen King hating it. But it's not my go-to film whenever I feel like watching a scary movie. It's just, I know that it's Stanley Kubrick's style, but it's just very slow, very drudging, and it's just, for me, it's a good movie to go to and take a nap to. But it's like whenever I'm paying attention, I do enjoy the movie. I can see it has a lot of good qualities. Mm-hmm. The parts of it that I don't really agree with their choices is, for example, Jack Nicholson as the main character.
Really? I thought he was spot on.
Well, and apparently Stephen King also had an issue with Kubrick's choice, but the reason why is because, I mean, I've read the book, and I don't think you've read the book, Jess, but in the book, it's literally a struggling alcoholic father that's just like, I stopped drinking alcohol because I don't want to hurt my son anymore, because he accidentally hurt his son in the book, but he is genuinely trying his hardest to be a good person. And so you get a sense of trying to create some sort of retribution for what he's done, and he's trying to be the best person he can be. While the Jack in Kubrick's version, he seems like it's more surface level. Like he's trying to look like he's trying, but he's not really trying. And he already kind of has a crazy look about him. While the one in the book, and also the miniseries, unfortunately, has a very slow transition, but a very, like, whenever you look at the beginning of the book to the end, you can see two different personalities. It's just the book essentially brings you through that ride of the person slowly going crazy. I just feel like that's a lot better done in the book and the miniseries than in Kubrick's version.
That's fair. Now, in Kubrick's defense, not really defense, he was sent a script from Stephen King. He didn't bother to read it. So I'm basing this solely on what I've seen this movie itself.
Yeah.
Since I haven't read the book yet, I really should.
It's a good book. Like it focuses.
Is it as slow as the movie was? Your look
no,
says, yeah.
No, and the reason why, at least to me, it wasn't quite as slow is you're in Jack's head the majority of the time, and so while in the miniseries they kind of focus on like the outside part that you see a little bit more, and also in like Kubrick's version. Like essentially all of the trippy parts you see in Kubrick's film, you see a lot more in the book. And it does add a lot more depth to Jack, to where I felt kind of bad for him, honestly. Well, the Jack in Kubrick's version, I'm like, he's a
jerk.
Douchebag. He can die. I don't care. But it's like in the book version, it's like this is a father that made a horrible mistake, and he realized the terrible trauma that he's caused for his family, and he's doing everything he can. It's almost like a book about addiction. Like he is fighting so hard to not be alcoholic anymore and not potentially hurt his family. But then he has these supernatural entities that are pushing him back towards it and kind of almost makes him have a rational turn on, oh, well, this is why it's okay for me to be like this now. So it's, yeah, the transition for in Kubrick's film isn't as much as I would have liked it to, but like the atmosphere, like the beginning of the movie, I feel like is a perfect frame of what to expect. On like, you see a single car driving, and I mean the camera is way back, so it makes the car look extremely alone in this vast wilderness. And I mean, even whenever it goes to the characters, it feels extremely isolating. You see them walking in huge areas where there's no one else around.
And the acoustics in that place are amazing. Sound just echoes everywhere.
Yeah, so it's like I get a really good sense of isolation. And then also the mother, there's kind of some drama about the actress herself, but I feel like the representation of the mother was pretty good, especially how, you know, her husband is her only form of socialization, just like besides her child.
Adult socialization.
Yes. And so her struggle on trying to keep some level of sanity, but then every time she reaches out to her husband for support or some sort of human interaction, he kind of, you know, bites her head off for doing so. I don't know. Do you have any, is there, so I know I don't have a lot else to add, as far as what I would change. The only thing that I will add is I love the symbolism, and, you know, first like the starting scene, but also like the blood coming from the elevator showing, you know, either there's been a lot of trauma from the past, or, you know, this is what's going to happen if you go to the hotel because your father's going to try and kill you. I thought that was a really nice touch. But you mentioned that there are some things about the movie that you would do differently. So walk me through what you enjoyed and what you would do differently.
So, I don't know. There's also a couple of things that I'd like to mention before we get to that. I do find it interesting that he did take this job saying that he wants to write more and everything, and I get that. But you also were hired to do a job, and you see him constantly like keeping himself at a distance away from his wife, his son, and not actually really writing, but doing anything but, almost kind of procrastinating and trying not to do it. And he still has this job, supposedly, of taking care of the hotel, and it ends up being the wife taking care of everything.
Yeah.
In the hotel.
And taking care of a child.
The son. Yeah. And trying to talk with him and maintain some kind of relationship, and then he keeps pushing her further and further away. Yeah. So, like, I don't know. It's just kind of an odd dynamic. Like, why would you even agree to do this kind of thing if you're not going to do anything that you said you were setting out to do?
Yeah, and what I also find interesting is the fact that he really blames his wife, and I mean, to some degree, his child for the position he's in. But it's like, he literally picked the perfect opportunity to write and do all of this stuff, and he's just, you know, passing away the time by, as you said, just procrastinating or, you know, doing anything but writing. And I understand that, you know, writer's block is a real thing. And, you know, sometimes you have to have, you know, ideas come to you. But to be fair, he should have really went down through the nitty gritty on what he wanted to write prior to, like once he got the job. I'm sure there was at least a little bit of time between him knowing he got the job and then him starting, that he could have brainstormed like, oh, this is kind of what I want to write about, and then he could have done some rough drafts, or, you know, it's like, he really didn't spend his time very well. And I feel like writer's block is a pretty poor excuse.
It is. And as far as writer's block, a lot of writing comes from experience. So instead of just isolating yourself and throwing a tennis ball against a wall and potentially breaking things in the hotel, you could have spent time with your family and gone and explored the area around the hotel.
Yeah.
Or explored the hotel itself as a family, or played games in the hotel, something to get your mind off of it. Because it's usually when your mind is off of something completely that inspiration strikes and something just clicks. It's like whenever you're working on a problem and you've been chewing on it for hours, if you step away, it helps reset your mind and you get a new perspective. And then things will click a little easier usually. So he really needed that connection and obviously some fresh air and vitamin D. But he wasn't getting any of that. He was more depriving himself of that than anything.
Yeah, and I know that to some level, once they were kind of blocked in with the snow, they could only do so much outside. But even if it was to step out and just long enough so that way you're not, freezing to death, at least it's a change of scenery. I mean, what's kind of ironic is this is the perfect time to review The Shining because many of us are in a very similar isolated situation where we can't go out as often. And I mean, I know there's some of you that's still living life as normal, but
No, I feel like I totally didn't start crazy. I thought you were going a different way with that.
No, but for others who have medical conditions, we've been trapped in our home since March. But anyways, so it's just is it really good? Oh, good. I'm glad. But anyways, I feel like
spicy, but it's good.
if he felt himself starting to go off the deep end and get stir crazy and stuff, he should have been mindful enough to change up the scenery or do something. Because it's like for me and my husband, it's like if we need a change of scenery, we'll just like go outside for a little bit, and when we get sick of the outdoors, we come back in, and most of the time, then problem solved. But also, I guess in his defense, it's not like he was really a phone call away from reaching out and socializing like we are with the internet. But I don't know, it's kind of difficult because on one end, I can see that he kind of set himself up for failure, but then on the other end, I'm like, well, he only had so much that he could do.
Yeah, he only had so much he could do, but those things he could do, he avoided completely.
Yeah.
So I don't really have that much sympathy for him.
Yeah. Well, and then also, I don't know if you've noticed this, but it seemed like he was sleeping in a lot, and his wife at one point mentioned that he must have stayed up late. The biggest thing about being isolated, and when you're not around other people, is to create a sense of routine for yourself. If you don't have a sense of routine, it kind of automatically kind of makes you feel out of whack. And so that, I mean, theoretically could have contributed. If he maybe had a lot more strict of a schedule and made it a habit, then maybe he would have kept. I mean, I know the point of the movie is like he's going to go crazy no matter what, but
well, but a routine could have delayed that a little bit, especially if you work into the routine a day or two here and there where you don't touch anything to do with writing.
Yes. Yeah. Like make a virtual weekend for yourself.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. Make it Monday through Friday is writing time and work time. And only during these hours.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody disturbs him during that time frame, Monday through Friday. And then the weekend and the evenings is family time.
Yeah.
Where they do something. And they need to schedule some time for their marriage. So, Danny, you go off and play or something. Play with your trucks or ride your bike around the halls or whatever. But mommy and daddy need some time alone.
Well, it's like, if anything, that's like the perfect compromise, because that way he gets his time to write the story, and then she gets her time with him that she desperately needs.
Well, and as well as that, they also need to schedule some time where it's just him and the kid.
Yes.
Because again,
yeah.
the mom is taking care of the hotel and the kid, and obviously doing all of the cooking for all three of them, and the cleaning, because there's no one else there. So she's doing the laundry, the dishes, the cooking, taking care of the kid, keeping up with the hotel, and he's doing none of this.
Yeah. Like, even
Mama needs some alone time.
It's like, if anything, if he just wrote Monday through Thursday, and then Friday spent with his whole family, and then Saturday with just him and his child, and then on Sunday spend at least a good chunk of the day, because, you know, realistically it can't be the whole day, you know, him and his wife, I feel like that would be
even if it's just like a morning, have like a morning meal with her, like cook for her every now and then. It doesn't have to be like every weekend or something, but like every now and then make her breakfast. And then just spend the morning together. Maybe take a walk when it's not completely snowed in, or just walk around the halls.
Yeah.
Get some form of exercise in.
The one thing, and this is specifically on the adaptation part that's interesting, is in the book, and I'm assuming in the miniseries. I honestly haven't seen the whole miniseries. In the book, it is stressed, like, repeatedly, that he has to check the boiler every single day, because if he doesn't, because the boiler is broken, it will cause an explosion. And so what's interesting is, as you read through the book, and as he gets more and more insane, there's parts where he goes to check on the boiler, and he's like, oh crap, like, it had been a while since I checked it, and it was close to blowing. And then, so the way that he actually dies in the book is he's like so crazy, and his wife and kid get away, that he completely forgot about the boiler, and it ends up exploding and it kills him. But it's kind of interesting. So it's like the boiler in the book at least kind of is a physical representation of his growing insanity. But in the movie, they just kind of mention the boiler like maybe once, and then they can throw it out the window.
Yeah, they don't really do anything with the boiler. You see her checking things down in the basement.
Yeah. Once
or twice, but not really consistently or anything. They don't really mention it otherwise. But that is a piece of trivia. So toward the end of the shooting for this movie, the set burned down.
Oh.
And there's actually a picture of the director in the middle of like the wreck.
Oh,
that is their set laughing. Because it's so ironic that at the end of shooting, their set burned down. And at the end of the book, that's how it ended, there was an explosion of fire that burned the hotel to the ground.
That is pretty funny. It's interesting how there's like life's little ironies like that.
Yes. So we did look up a little bit of trivia for this movie, and it did make it more interesting for sure, guys. Let's go ahead and move on to realism.
Yes. For me, it's kind of hard exactly to place the realism, because there's so much. I mean, it's a Stanley Kubrick film, so there's so much like craziness. But trying to put all of the extra artsiness of it aside, I feel like this is a pretty realistic movie. I mean, there are unfortunately countless stories of people either going stir crazy or being trapped, and terrible things occurring.
We're not meant to be alone.
Yes.
Our species is not meant to be alone. We are very much pack and community oriented.
Yeah.
So being alone does things to your brain.
Yeah. So I would, I'm thinking maybe a 7. Because like I said, I'm paying all the artsy fartsy stuff aside. I'm just looking at the characters, the situation, the reactions. So I think a 7.
I would give it a 6. I do count off a little bit for obviously the random supernatural things that don't really make that much sense, even in the storyline itself.
And The Shining, like that definitely
Yeah.
detracts.
I mean, that isn't that big a deal.
Yeah.
To me, it more tells them what could happen.
Yeah.
Or what is currently happening, which a lot of the things you can gather from context clues and things. Just things you hear, or you can infer with the way things are going, this is probably going to happen. So I don't really count off for that itself. The mental telepathy, talking to each other, is a bit much.
Yeah.
Bit much. But I can understand, like, his name in the movie is Dick Halloran. It's Scatman Crothers, the guy that has The Shining, the older gentleman that has The Shining, that was showing them around the hotel.
Yeah.
And I can see him, after walking through with the family and talking with the kid especially, and seeing how special he is and how smart and all, he would be concerned with them being alone for so long. And in the film, I mean, Jack Nicholson, his character was a little off from the beginning. Like,
yeah,
he looked kind of like he was riding the edge a little bit.
Yeah, already, yeah.
So I could see that guy being concerned for the family, and then trying to call just to check in, see if, they want to talk or have any kind of other human or interaction apart from each other, because families get sick of each other. It happens. And then not being able to get through to them, and then trying the police station, knowing that the lines are down and will probably be down for a while, asking someone to go check on them, and hearing that it probably won't happen. And there's a giant storm going on, and getting more and more concerned. He just has this off feeling. The flight up there is a bit extreme, but it didn't seem like he really had family or anything. He seemed kind of alone himself.
Yeah.
So he felt really connected to the kid especially, and then really wanted to check on them. I don't know how he found another snowcat in that amount of time once he finally got there.
I mean, to be fair, though,
a little bit.
But it's like if you're in an area where there's a lot of snow, I feel like it wouldn't be like quite that hard.
I feel like most of them would be sold out or already rented out. So I feel like it'd be more difficult than it was, seemingly, for him to actually find one available, is what I'm saying, within that amount of time. I could understand, like, looking for a couple of days and then finally finding one that was probably rather crappy but would do the job, and then making his way up there. But within, like, the span of a couple hours, it seemed like, finding one and making his way up there.
Maybe.
I also take off a little bit. This is mostly because it annoys the crap out of me. The mom, when she runs into the bathroom with the kid, and tries to open the window and it, like, gets stuck, she can't actually open it all the way. You cannot tell me that any other mom on the face of the planet would not be busting down that damn window. Using any means necessary.
Yeah, like, her life's in danger. You're gonna do anything you can to get out of there.
Not just her life, her child's life is in danger.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, where's Mama Bear? Because she wasn't present in this movie.
Yeah, okay, so, man,
Maybe I'm just used to my southern mama that would, like...
Well, now that I think about how many times she dropped her freaking weapon?
Yes!
I'm bumping it down to a 6.5. I don't think it's quite a 6 for me, but a 6.5 for sure, because I feel like every single moment she'd like, oh, here's a weapon. Oh, I dropped the weapon. And then, as you said, like in the bathroom, she had additional objects she could use to fight against him that she just...
had numerous objects in there.
that she didn't utilize.
Yeah.
Like the toilet
got
lid
a big long knife, but I mean that's going to be a little ineffective for the situation.
It takes a long time.
It really does. I'm going to grab that lid off of the toilet and I'm going to jab it right in his face as soon as he sticks it in there.
Yeah. Yeah,
love you, honey, but you're trying to kill me and my son, so F you, because
I didn't pay attention, honestly, but so did it have like the basin cover, or was it just like the toilet seat cover?
It didn't actually really show it, but I would grab like the basin cover.
Yeah, those things are
toilet
heavy.
Seat cover are usually like bolted down, and you might not necessarily be able to get those off in a reasonable amount of time while he's chopping down the door to get you.
Yeah.
So, but the basin cover is like never bolted down.
That can give you a serious concussion, at least.
Some good heft to it.
Yeah.
And even if it breaks, now you have stabby shards.
Yeah, yeah.
For additional weapons that still have some heft to it.
Yeah, she was.
But you could also use the basin cover to break the window and get out.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
So I do take off a lot for that. And when she's looking at the snowcat with the thing that was sitting on there, it really did look like a headlight. And she didn't even try to turn on the thing. Which, in her defense, many people don't understand the different parts of a car. I know I don't know most of the parts on there. So if there's a part sitting there and the hood is open, she probably thought, well, crap, it's not going to work. But if it's a freaking headlight, I'm pretty sure the thing will drive just fine.
It did look like a headlight.
It looked like just the headlight was sitting there with wires cut off it.
And also, another thing that, I don't know, I feel like they just set up the couple to not having very good communication skills at all. It's like the guy freaks out at the wife freaks out at him. It's like they can't really have a normal conversation unless if they're being lovey-dovey. It's like there's no like middle ground. It's like, why can't they have a good constructive conversation without like blowing up at each other?
Well, and the one time that she like went off on him was when Danny came in with like bruise marks on his neck.
Yeah.
And I can kind of understand her reaction. He had hurt the kid at one point in their past. It was a few years ago, and she knew she didn't do it. And as far as they're all aware, they're the only ones in the hotel.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's hard for me to speak on how I would react because I haven't luckily experienced, a kid facing abuse. But at least in my mind, if it had been 3 years, as he's claiming, then I would probably think or try and ask the kid, like, did you fall and hurt yourself? Did you like bump against something? Like, there are other things that could cause that type of mark versus immediately going to the dad and be like, you hurt our child. Because
it was very much a 0 to 100.
And that just goes to show how little she trusts him, which ended up making him upset. And it's just like they were just kind of a doomed couple to begin with. Like, if you don't have trust, then
you got nothing.
Yeah,
but I mean, I can kind of see where she's coming from. He's been isolating himself more and more and more. And so she doesn't know what he's thinking, how he's feeling, anything like that. They haven't actually really talked in a while that we've seen. So, and he does have this past history of doing that kind of thing. So we're not sure if maybe that's kind of how he was acting before when that happened. So that kind of made her think that, oh, he's back at it again. It's the same thing over again or not. She does come back later and says, Danny told me there's a crazy lady in one of the rooms that did this to him.
Yeah.
But there was also no sorry, I accused you of this.
Yeah, she never apologizes, but he never apologizes back. Like, whenever he was writing and he just snaps at her, like, he never apologizes. Like, they need some serious couples counseling, like some serious
And
and
communication skills being
Yes.
worked on, because,
yes.
excuse you, you do realize who makes all your meals, sir?
Yeah,
You
just
really want to talk to me that way?
not a very toxic family.
Yeah.
They all need to work on their individual problems. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't have anything additional I want to add on the realism scale. How about you?
Not on the realism, but now I will get into what I would like to see if they happened to remake this movie in the future.
Okay.
So, what I would like to see, I do want them to keep certain iconic things. I want to put that out there right now, right off the bat. But I want them to, first, with the casting, now that I think about it, I want them to make the dad a very average character. He needs to look like the average Joe. Because, to be fair, Jack Nicholson is a creepy guy. He has serious villain face.
Like, I've seen him in a rom-com. He looked evil. I'm sorry, he didn't.
Yes, it's hard to watch him in those kind of movies, like the comedies and the rom-coms, because he does not... Sweetie, you don't have the face for it. Like, you really don't. I know you're probably a wonderful human being and a very nice guy, but you got serious villain face going on, man.
Aw.
There's a reason they chose him to play the Joker. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So have the dad, an average Joe kind of character. You don't need to make him like super pretty, like most of the time they do, or make him look off at all. Just a very average, dad next door kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
The Bob at the office kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
The mom, director, don't terrify her or
Yeah.
abuse her like Kubrick did to Shelley Duvall the entire time. Just, she should be another average Daisy Sue kind of mom next door character too. This
Mhm.
needs to be like an actual average family
Yeah.
from down the street. Like any other quiet family.
Yeah.
Because that's when it really hits home more. This dad, again, villain face, something's up at the very first freaking scene. I would also like, since Stephen King based this story on a hotel that he visited where there were actual reports of ghost activity, just weird things happening. Doors for closets or the door to the hallways opening and closing, glasses shattering, things being moved, just random stuff like that. So put that into the movie as a slight buildup and just a slight stress on the relationship and things going on, because it seemed pretty quiet for the most part, apart from, the kid having visions of random things happening.
Yeah.
And then it goes, 0 to 60 in no time flat, basically. He just snaps out of nowhere with almost no buildup apart from the isolation.
Yeah, it starts off very slow and then it changes very quickly. Like, there's not
Yes.
a whole lot of buildup, it feels like.
And it's like all towards the climax of the movie
Yeah.
when the storm hits. So have a bit more buildup with just random things being moved and all, and them thinking nothing of it at first. But then have it get weirder and weirder and weirder. And her, like the mom trying to go to the husband and saying, I've seen this stuff and all. And him starting to snap at her, you're interrupting again. I'm trying to write. Why don't you understand this? I've told you several times. And then them snapping at each other. Well, you don't talk to me, talking about their relationship.
Yeah.
I'm feeling isolated from you two.
Yeah.
And them going on and on like that. Meanwhile, the kids seeing weirder and weirder stuff in the rooms. And dangerous things happening, knives falling, whatever. Just different things like that to really stress the point that something else is here, not just their isolation.
Mm-hmm. And it would be interesting too if, like, while the objects were being moved and stuff was falling, if like the dad and the mom were almost accusing each other, like, did you move this thing? And it almost like perpetuates their isolation and arguing.
Yes, or the dad starting to blame the kid.
Yeah.
And point the finger at the kid.
And then mom's trying to, like,
taking
defend
care
him.
of the kid. He's got to be moving it because you're not giving him enough attention. And she's like, I'm giving him all the attention. You're not talking to either of us.
Yeah, or she even, like, defending the kid, like, I know he wouldn't have done that, and or he's been with me the whole time. Yeah, that I like that. Mm-hmm. I like that a lot.
Start snapping at each other there. Keep the boiler part in from the book, because that's a really good representation of his mental state and him just, the feelings and everything just starting to boil over. You can, like, see the needle point going to the red in his head.
Yeah.
Every time stuff like this happens. And then he finally goes down there. And then when he resets the boiler, have him just calm down, go to the wife and apologize.
I love that. That's
so you
awesome.
see the needle backing down.
And then he cools down and then...
He cools down, apologizes. They seem like they're okay again. And then weird stuff starts happening again. And then the stress mark moves.
Or like one of the parts where his, like, he almost forgets to do the boiler, have them have like a really bad argument. And then he's like, oh crap. And then he goes and then fixes it. And then after that, he's like, okay. Yeah, I love that. I love that idea.
So have that be like a representation of his mental state and their relationship at the same time.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
And keep the things in, like him breaking through the door with an axe. You can still keep the creepy lady that tries to strangle the kid in 237, which in the book was 217. They changed it because the hotel that they were using were concerned that no one would want to use that room because of the movie. So in that actual hotel that they used as the set, 237 does not exist. So keep that scene in where the kid almost gets strangled by the ghost, and then have the dad check that room. You can keep the creepy scene, the weird scene that seemed a little out of place, but whatever. And then have more of a rotting kind of lady in there, because that wasn't quite, I feel like, I could be wrong, but I feel like that's not quite what a body would look like if it had been in the water rotting for a while. It would look a bit more bloated and more gross and like stuff coming off.
Yeah.
Just nastier. And just saying. I still don't quite understand, personally, the scene of the elevator with the torrent of blood. That's always seemed out of place, personally.
I always took it as to be like symbolic to represent what's happened in the past and what will happen in the future without blatantly showing what's going to happen. But I mean, to be fair, it is a pretty artsy-fartsy film. Like, as far as like the mainstream, it's definitely towards the artsy-fartsy side, but it's not so much that you can't follow along with what's going on. But there are some scenes that you're like, what? Like the mom coming across the people that are having sex and they're all like yeah, the furries. I don't think that they are quite furries, but
I don't understand that. Well, the one was in a dog suit. It's furry.
Okay. Well, I just don't
1980s furry.
Oh my God.
Just saying. But so in the new movie, you can keep the blood elevator scene, but in that you're using it as only in their visions of what is to come, not actually happening, because she sees it happen and it makes no sense. Like, that's where is the blood coming from? Why is it here in this elevator, this random hallway? Like, there's not really a reason to it.
Yeah.
So I can understand that that's a representation in their vision that it's going to be a bloodbath. But when stuff is actually happening, you don't actually need to show the blood elevator.
Well, I think maybe because, in the beginning of the film, whenever Danny is seeing like different visions and stuff, it's very obvious like what's a vision and what's real life. But as the film goes on, it gets a little bit harder to tell on like what is the vision that they're seeing versus what's reality. So maybe it is supposed to be a part of that transition on like the mother really is seeing it through her head, but she feels like it's reality. Or maybe it's her like realizing how much danger they're in. I don't know. That's why
I don't know. It didn't really come across that way to me, honestly. It just gave me more questions.
Yeah, this definitely isn't one of those movies. If you want like a cut straight answer, it's not a good movie for that, because there is like I said, it's kind of on the more artsy fartsy side, and so it's like at least I enjoy it because it's open to different types of interpretation. But then you get really weird interpretations where they're like, oh, since Danny was wearing the Apollo shirt and he went into room 237, that means that the moon landing was faked. It's like, what? that's
Look it up, guys.
That escalated quickly.
A lot of the trivia that we've looked at, it did make people think that he helped fake the moon landing. But also, I forgot to mention, in the realism scale, when Jack Torrance dies by freezing to death, where you see his body, like...
Perfect face.
100% that's what he looked like. That is not what he would actually look like. When you freeze to death, you go to sleep first. You, like, pass out from the cold. It drains you completely, and you pass out and you fall asleep. You fall unconscious first, and then you die. So he wouldn't have frozen like that.
And just as a FYI, I am totally using that face for the thumbnail.
I had a feeling you would.
I'm just like, perfect.
I had a feeling you would. This is fine. So, definitely what I wanted my legacy to be.
Yay!
So those are the thoughts that I would have for anyone aspiring to remake this movie. I still like the boiler idea for the ending too, so I would keep that in instead of him freezing to death in the random hedge maze. Also, apparently in the book, they didn't have a hedge maze, but they had lifelike hedges that were shaped like animals and things. And in the book, they started like coming alive or something like that. Well,
it's more like it is another one of the illusions. Like, it didn't really come to life. They just like were like, hey, did that hedge move? And so it's a part of the mental thing. But
yeah. So,
but I will say, I feel like the book is worth reading because it did give me a little bit different of a perspective. But it's kind of similar to the Kubrick version of like how confusing it can sometimes get with the different like visions and stuff like that. Like, the book has a lot of visions, but because you know that you're mainly in his head, you can kind of almost put yourself in that position and be more open to it, at least. While in Kubrick's film, you're like, well, you're following these characters, and yes, Jack is the main character, but it's kind of it doesn't make quite as much sense when you see the visions that he's seeing. I don't know, but I feel like the book is worth the read, but it's definitely, for me, it was
Stephen King, guys.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't. It was slightly more entertaining than watching the Stanley Kubrick film, but I honestly, I think of them as two separate entities, as I guess they have a connecting story, but they have such different interpretations of the same type of story that I can't really compare them.
I have a question.
Huh.
So, on a scale of Like comparing the book to movie on a scale of Aragon to Harry Potter.
I mean, Harry Potter's not that close to the book, but I mean, it's pretty
But it's a
decent.
hell of a lot closer than Aragon, for damn sure.
Yeah. It's almost like...
Is it like in between the two?
It's kind of in between. And there's actually a adaptation that was like the perfect comparison, but of course now that I'm on the spot, I can't think of it.
Of course.
But
Of course not.
it's like you can definitely see Kubrick essentially took the elements of the book and the basic premise of the book, but then he's like, well, how can I switch it around to represent my vision? So it's like you can definitely see parts and signs of the book, and a lot of the things that happen is along the lines of what happens in the book, but the additional elements, like the boiler that's in the book was taken away. The focus on Jack's alcoholism and him truly wanting to heal and move past that and trying to heal his family as well, because he did feel that his wife hadn't really forgiven him, which is understandable. But it's like in the movie, it touches on those elements, but really doesn't focus on it. It just focuses on the isolation and him slowly turning.
Yeah, you get the barest hints of those other things.
Yeah, so I don't know if maybe Kubrick was like, we need to keep those elements but make them more subtle so that way the audience has to kind of figure it out, and he just, didn't like how blatant Stephen King was focusing on them, or if he thought that the isolation was going to be more interesting. I honestly don't know a whole lot about his intention with the film.
I don't know. And I know it's hard. With movies, you have a finite amount of time, and it's very, very limited with how much you can put in the movie. So not everything gets translated from the book to the movie. I get that.
Yeah.
But I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There needs to be a position in Hollywood where their only role is to read the book. And then when the director starts going, okay, yeah, that's cool, but what if we did this? They smack them in the head with the book.
But I feel like there are some things that don't translate super well to film.
Yes, but that's when they need to get with the author and see how they can translate it better or change it to where it's not completely different, but still makes sense with the storyline and is still true to what they're trying to convey. Because more often than not, they change it to be something entirely different than what the author was trying to go for.
That does kind of relate back to Harry Potter. They would actually consult...
She was on set.
With her all the time, and anytime they needed to take out something or they needed to change something, they would consult her, and they're like, this is why we're making this change, do you agree? And she's like, oh, okay. Like, the majority of the changes she consented to. But to wrap it up, essentially, if you enjoy kind of like more interpretive films, then you'll like The Shining. If you like cookie cutter black and white films, this movie's probably going to frustrate you.
Yeah, this is not the cookie cutter films. It's not. It's out there.
And then also with the book, it goes... I feel like it's kind of somewhere in the middle to where it is a little bit more black and white because you know what he's focusing on, but it is still... A lot of the scenes are out there because it's dealing with like supernatural stuff and then like your mental state. But at least for me personally, it's definitely has been worth a watch, and I'm glad that I've watched the film multiple times and that I read the book. It has made some level of impact on how much I enjoy and appreciate films, but I can also see it not being like that for everyone.
I do still notice different things each time I watch the film. Just different little details here and there that I missed on previous watches. So it is worth a couple of watches, guys. I watch it around wintertime every year. I had avoided it for a little while because of the pandemic and everything going on. It hits a little close to home right now. But it is a really interesting and good film. It's not going to scare you. I doubt, unless you're a marshmallow.
It kind of grosses you out sometimes, though.
A little.
Like with the lady in the tub, but that's about it.
A little. It kind of oogs you out. It's weird and uncomfortable. But it's not gonna, like, keep you up at night.
Yeah.
It's not like Lights Out, where you're like, all lights must be on for the rest of my life. Never going to sleep again. Screw this movie kind of thing. You'll be able to nap during and after it.
Yeah, it's kind of even though it's considered a horror film, it's kind of a more chill horror film.
Yeah,
like
it's very
even
chill.
like out of like a slasher movie, it's just like, yeah, it's definitely more exciting at the end, but I'm not extremely like, oh, you gotta get away.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel as intense like Halloween.
It's really not that intense. I mean, they have one death, like one kill for it, because I don't really count the kids because they're already dead by the time the film starts.
Yeah.
So they're ghosts, technically. They are apparitions at this point. So I don't count them on the kill count because at that point they're already dead. So they have just the one kill to his name, and that's the guy that he axes in the heart as he comes around the corner because he's trying to be a good guy. So, and then he dies of environmental causes. Not really natural causes, but environmental causes. I mean, it's not technically a slasher film because there's only really one kill.
I don't know. Yeah, it's like, would this be a supernatural film or a slasher film?
I feel
Kinda
like
both.
it's a supernatural / psychological film because it does show somewhat his descent into madness. Not very well, but it does show it. And it does have supernatural elements with the random apparitions that they see, the creepy girls, which are probably the scariest thing in the entire movie, apart from the thought of the woman having to clean the entire hotel herself. And they have the people in the ballroom, the bartender, the waiter guy. So, yeah, supernatural / psychological film. Barely horror. But it's considered in the genre. So that's all I've got to say on this one. It's definitely worth the watch. Next week, since it is January, we are going to watch a comedy horror that I've seen before, but Alyssa hasn't. This one, again, is not really going to be scary. We're probably going to be laughing our asses off the entire time. It's called The Cleanse. And I hope you guys get to watch it before we have the review coming out.
I think I remember you telling me about it.
I did tell you about it. Guys, go watch it. It's funny. It's got a couple of scenes, but it's considered a comedy horror. So we're gonna get some laughs and semi-spoops, more uncomfortable spoops in for the next time. So
Oh, no.
hope you guys can join us next week for The Cleanse. Until then, stay safe and stay spoopy. And don't forget to stretch. I know you guys have got your New Year's resolutions going for now, unless you have neglected them already. So, bye!
Bye.